Greetings and thanks for keeping the rendezvous. It's a pleasure to know that you are watching. Thanks for studying with us. Remember that for you to learn, you need to dedicate time to study. In these videos that we are making, these videos on their own are not enough to help you to study. You must put in your own personal effort. For you to put in your own efforts, you need to know that for you to acquire anything, you need to sacrifice your comfort time. So we therefore call on you to sacrifice and learn how to use your computer. In the present moment, we are concentrating on Excel. And so our live lessons are on Excel. We're going to get into other areas in the computer in the subsequent days. Now, we are making this also we want to make this very clear that for anyone who is learning with us, our videos are not for you to watch once. Watch the video as many times as possible. Watch it over and over and over. And then you can pause the video because the videos at times are very fast. And if you want to follow along with us on the video, you may not be able to follow along. So you have to watch the first time to have an idea of what we are saying. Then you have to watch again the second time so that you can understand what I'm saying very well. And then the third time, you can watch and be pausing and watch and pause and watch and pause, such that you practice. Then we have sent to you the data or the material that we are using to practice. Please make sure that you use the materials very well. They're going to help you to learn and learn very well. And at any time that you're practicing, make sure that you make a copy of the file. Use Save As to keep a copy of the file. Right, that's it. Without any waste of time, let's get onto our PC and see what we'll be doing today. In our lesson of today, we're going to work on the Energy Cost tab. On the Energy Cost tab, we're going to perform calculations just like we've been performing calculations. Again, we're going to see how an absolute reference will affect our calculation and how relative references will also affect our calculation. Remember that using absolute references will help you a lot in Excel. Then we're also going to see formatting. We're going to see how to format ourselves. Now, if you look at this data, then you notice that the data, there's a lot of inconsistency in its formatting. We need to arrange it so that it looks good, such that anybody looking at it can already have an idea of what we have presented here. So we're going to see how to format data. Right, that's it. Everybody should have received this file T1 formula L3. Open T1 formula A3, L3, open T1 formula L3 and go to the Energy Cost tab. If you are on the Energy Cost tab, then that's the tab that we'll be using today. Let me take you to our question PDF. In this PDF, we have been asked, the first exercise that we've been asked is that we've been told that this sheet contains the amount spent on electricity and gas each month over 1 year. And so we are expecting to have the months of a year being displayed. And we've been told that in cell B10, we should calculate the cost of electricity in January. This will be the number of units used, which is found in B8, multiplied by the electricity unit cost in P3. And we have also been given a hint here. It says, hint, in order to be able to copy this formula for other months, you will need to use an absolute reference for P3. Hope we know what an absolute reference is. An absolute reference is when we use a cell reference to represent data on our spreadsheet that will not change as we autofill across either the rows or across the columns. Let's get onto our spreadsheet and see how this is going to turn out. On our spreadsheet, we have this data has been given to us. We have been told that we should go to the cell B10 and that in the cell B10, we should give the costs of electricity, and that should be the unit cost times the units that have been used. We have been told that the used units are found in B8 and that the cost of electricity is found in P3. So we're going to use these two to multiply. Now let me put my equal to sign. When you put your equal to sign, Excel knows that what is coming next is going to be a formula. And so Excel will operate it and give you a result. Remember that if I just enter a B3 here without putting my equal to, if I just put my B3 and I say asterisk P3, nothing will happen. That will just give me B3 times P3 because Excel does not see that as a formula. So Excel will not perform the operation. Let me go ahead and put equal to in my formula. Remember that you can always edit your formula using the formula bar. And remember that the tools that will help you to perform your operations in Excel are found on the toolbar. And this toolbar is a group of tools, and we have different tabs, and these tabs will present different tools. Hope you remember that. Now let's go ahead and see this. When I hit on enter here, it gives me a response. Now check that out. You'll notice that my response is not displaying well. It means that there is a problem in that cell. Let's see how to handle this. When I check out this cell very well, I notice that the formula there is B3 times P3. That looks quite good to me. I'm going to adjust the width of column B. Remember that for us to adjust the width of column B, we are adjusting the width of column B such that this value here can enter, so that we can see what is there. Now, nothing is displaying there, so it means that there is a problem. Let me expand it out. When I expand it out, it shows me that that there is a problem somewhere. Let us check out to see what the problem can be. We have cell B3. Okay, that should be B8 and not B3. Now, when you look at that, you see that in B3, we have a label. We have a label and not a value. That's why Excel has not been able to perform that calculation. Hope you remember the difference between a label and a value. Now let's hit B8 times P3 and we hit on enter. When we hit on enter, it gives us the answer. It gives us 15.3 as the cost of units used. The total units that we have used is 102, and the costs per unit, the unit cost for electricity per kilowatt is 0.15. Now, it means therefore that we have calculated our cost per unit, and we have calculated our cost per unit. Now, let's see our formula again. When we check out our formula, we notice that we have a relative reference being multiplied by another relative reference. It means that when we autofill this formula across the columns, it's going to change. The formula will be changing. But when it changes, look at what happens. We have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 across. That is because of the use of relative reference. We need to make our reference be absolute. A part of our equation is supposed to have an absolute reference. Let's go ahead and check this out. When I click in cell M10, I have something in my formula, AA3. I don't even know where that reference is found. So it means that there is a problem in my formula. Let's go ahead and check this out. I'll hit the undo button. When I hit the undo button, it means that the formula in B10 is not quite good. Now, which of the cells, which of the references needs to be absolute? Let me see. I have B8. B8 is the unit of electricity that has been used in the month of January. And C8 is the unit for February. And it moves around. It means that B8 is supposed to be changing when we autofill across. But now, check this out. The unit cost of electricity is P3. And it's P3 for January, P3 for February, P3 for March, P3 for November, and P3 for December. It means that P3 is not supposed to change. So we're going to use an absolute reference for P3. And for us to use an absolute reference, remember that we use the dollar mark. For us to use the dollar mark, you press on your shift key on the keyboard and you press the dollar sign. The dollar sign is found on your key 4. When that is done, we hit on enter. When we hit on enter, remember that our answer in the cell B10 will not change. Our answer there will not change, but that is going to help us to perform our autofill across the columns to replicate that formula for the other months. Let me release and we see. When I release, we have the values and we have OK in the cell N10. That means that what we have done is quite in order. Let's go to the next exercise. The next exercise tells us that in cell B11, let's calculate the monthly charge for January based on the daily charge in P7 and the number of days in January B12. Hint: in order to be able to copy this formula for other months, you will need to use an absolute reference for one of these. Remember that we have been asked that in cell B11, let's calculate the monthly charge for January based on daily charge in P7 and the number of days in the January. Now let's check that out. It means that in this our energy cost sheet, on this our energy cost sheet, we have the charges, and these charges of electricity is per day. It means that charges per day is 0.2. It means for every day that you use electricity, you are going to pay 0.2 in your currency. Now, when we go back now, we have monthly charge. It means that in the month of January, he's going to pay this charge for 31 days. In the month of February, he'll pay this charge for 28 days. In the month of March, he'll pay the same charge for 31 days. It means therefore that in our reference, we're going to have equal to the charge, the number of days in the month of January, which is found in B2, times the charges for electricity per day, which is found in P7. But we need to take note of the fact that the charge per day will not vary across the month, but the number of days in a month will vary across the month. So we are going to make sure that our reference, the reference for the charge per day is absolute, while the reference for the number of days is relative. Check that out. The reference for the charge per day is absolute, while the reference for the charge number of days is relative. That is because our number of days can change, but the charge per day for electricity will not change. Let's hit on enter. When we hit on enter, we need now to replicate this. We use the autofill handle that's found to the bottom right of our active cell. Then we drag and drop across that row. When we drag and drop, we check out in N11 to be sure that we have OK there. Now we have OK there, and that looks quite good to me. We have the cost for the month. Let's go to the next question and see what we have been asked to do. We've been asked in the next question that we should check in cell B12. Let's calculate the cost of electricity for January by adding the unit charge and the monthly charge. It means that in a month, like for example, in the month of January, you have the costs per unit for using electricity, and you also have the charges per day for using electricity. So we want to know the total cost now that we'll pay for electricity in the month of January. That will be the cost of units used plus the monthly charge for January. So we're going to say equal to, and we'll say it's B10 plus B11, and we hit on enter. Now let's check out that formula to see if we need to have any absolute value there. We see that the charge, the cost of units used for January will be changing, while the monthly charge will also be changing. It means therefore that we don't need to use any absolute reference here. Both of them are supposed to be relative, such that when we autofill now across the columns, the column reference B should be changing, such that when I autofill now to column C, in my equation I should have C. To column D, my equation now should have D, and in the same way all across. And when we do that, we check out to see in N12 that we have OK. If we have OK in N12, then that is quite all right, and we have done it correctly. Now let's go back to the next thing. We've been told that we should check these three formulae, particularly as regards the use of absolute references, and copy them to calculate costs for all the remaining months. Check that out. We should check these three formulae, particularly as regards the use of absolute references, and copy them to calculate costs for all the remaining months. Now, we are already good to go here. We have used absolute references where we are supposed to use them, and we have used relative references where we are supposed to use them. Hope you understand very well the use of references in cells. Remember that in this formula in B10, we could have as well enter the value or the content of the cell B8, that is 102, and we could have as well entered the unit charge of electricity, which is 0.15. And if we had done that, our answer will still be 15.3. That will not help us to replicate the formula across, because we would not have been able to have this result. So we are using cell references to be able to copy our formula across to other cells. And we also use either absolute reference or relative reference depending on how we want to replicate our formula. Now let's check out our next exercise. The next one says, likewise, in cells B19, B20, and B21, calculate the cost of gas for January using the unit cost in B10 and the daily charge in C8. In P8, in the cell P8, make sure that you use absolute references where appropriate. Then let's go back and see. That's in cell B19, B20, and B21. All right. In cell B19, B20, and B21, we've been asked to calculate the cost of units used, the monthly charge, and the cost for a month. And that will be almost the same thing that we did for electricity. Remember that this is the cost now for gas. So we need now to calculate the cost for gas readings, and we have done it for electricity. Let's do it for gas. For gas, we notice that the unit used for gas is found in the cell B17. So we're going to put B17 there. B17 times the charge or the cost for using the unit cost for using gas is found in P4. So we are not going to put the value that is found in P4. Remember, we are using cell references here, and remember why we are using it. And we also need now to make sure that one of them is absolute. And as you will imagine, normally P3 should be absolute because P3 will not vary. P3 will not change across the months, but the units used will change across the month. So we're going to enter our dollar mark here that will permit us to be able to ascertain that that reference is absolute. Remember that when we put the dollar before P, it means that P should not change. When we put it before 4, it also means that 4 should not change. So we are taking measures of security there. Then we are also going to replicate this formula across. When we do that, we should have OK here. Then we have the monthly charge. The monthly charge should be calculated in the same way that we did for the monthly charge of electricity use. Now that is going to be the number of days in the month of January times the charges for gas per day times the charges for gas per day. And again, the charges for gas per day will not vary, but the number of days in a month will be varying. That is why we need to give charges per day an absolute reference, and we hit on enter. Then we click in that cell, we replicate that across the rows. Then in the cost for the month will be cost of units used plus monthly charge. That is equal to costs of units used plus the monthly charge. We hit on OK and we replicate this formula across to have OK in the cell N21. If that is done, then we can now check out the next step. The next step says we should now go to B in the cell B23, calculate the costs of both electricity and gas for January, and in cell B24, the cost per day. Let's copy these for all the months. Now let's check that out. B23 and B24. We go to B23. In B23, we've been asked to calculate the total costs for energy. The total cost for energy will be the total cost for electricity plus the total cost for gas. The total cost for electricity plus the total cost for gas. Now, the cost for a month for electricity is found in the cell B12. It's found in the cell B12. And the cost for the month for gas is found in the cell B17. So that will be B12 plus B17. And remember that that cost will vary across the months. That is why we leave it to be relative, such that when we autofill, it should replicate itself across the month. Let's do that and check out the cell N23 whether we'll have OK there. We don't have OK there. It means that there is an error in our formula. For us to check this out, we need to go back to our formula bar. Let's go back to our formula and check our formula. When I go back to my formula with my active cell being the cell B23, I will notice that my formula is calculating the cost for the month in B12, which is all right, and the cost for the month in the B17. And when I look at that, that is the used unit for gas reading. That is not what I want to have there. I need to have bird cost for the month for gas, and that is found in B21. So it means that I'm going to delete 17 and put 21. Be very careful there. Delete 17 carefully and put 21. That is what you do when you make an error in an equation. Then we hit on enter. When we hit on enter, we're going now to autofill this, and you check out this to see that we have OK in the cell N23. So when you have an error in an equation, you don't feel disturbed. Don't think that heaven is going to break loose, but then just go back to your formula bar and review the formula. It is very, very normal when you're going to be writing complicated functions, using complicated functions and writing complicated equations. You will obviously have these errors popping up, and you use your formula bar to be able to modify those errors. Our next exercise requires that we should calculate the cost per day of energy. That is because in a month, our total cost for energy is given in the cell B23, but we want to know the average cost of energy that we're going to be spending per day. That means that in a month of 31 days, we paid 29.52 for energy. So what will be the cost per day? The cost per day would be equal to the total cost found in cell B23 divided by, we're going to use a forward slash for division in this case, divided by the number of days in the month of January that is found in B2. When that is done, we hit on enter. When I hit on enter, I'll check out my formula again to be sure. That is B23 divided by B2. Then I'll autofill this across, and I have OK in the cell N24. And that looks quite okay for me. Let's go ahead and see our next exercise. In cell P12 and P13, use the sum functions to calculate the total cost of electricity and gas for the year, and calculate the total energy cost for the year in P14. So we are calculating the total cost of electricity and gas for the year, and we also calculate the total energy cost for the year in P14. Now let's go and check that out. We go to P12, P13, and P14. So we have to calculate the total costs of electricity for the year, total cost of gas for the year, and the total energy cost for the year. Let's go ahead and hit that. We say equal to total cost of electricity for the year will be the total cost across the months. So I'll be saying equal to sum, I open my bracket. Remember that for you to sum a range of cells, you need to use the colon notation. So we'll be summing from January to December, and December is found in M12. December is found in M12. So that is what we'll be summing, and we hit on enter to see whether we have OK. We have OK in Cure 12. That looks quite good. Then the total cost also for gas, we do it in the same way, would be the cost for the month of January for gas. So we are summing from January to December. That's why we say B21 to M21. Then we hit on enter, and we have OK there. Then the total now, the total for electricity and gas for the year will be equal to P12 plus P13. Then we hit on OK, enter, and we have OK there. That is OK to me. Then we go back and we check the next exercise. The next exercise tells us that we should calculate the total number of days in P16, and in cell P17, calculate the mean average daily cost for energy. Let's go ahead and check that out. Now, the total number of days in a year will be equal to the sum of the number of days in January that's the sum of the number of days from January to the number of days in December. Sum of the number of days from January to the number of days in December. That is going to sum all these number of days for us, and we hit on enter. And when we hit on enter, we have 365. That is quite all right for us. And we look at Cure 16, it gives us OK. Then we have the mean daily cost. Remember that the total costs of energy in a year is found in P14, and the number of days in a year is 365, found in P16. So it means therefore that the mean daily cost will be the total cost for the year divided by the number of days in a year. And when we do that, we hit on enter, and it gives us OK. Let's check out our next exercise. Our next exercise says there is a lot of inconsistency in the display of values. Format all the cells in columns B to M that show cost to 2 decimal places. Display the total cost P12 to P14 as currency and the mean daily cost P17 as currency to 3 decimal places. So we're going to see how to arrange this. For us to reduce the decimal places for P17, we need to go up to the number group. On the home tab in the number group, we need to reduce the number of decimal places. When you look at it, you have these two toes here. These two toes, one of them is showing you is going to the left, the other one is going to the right. When I click on this one going to the right, it's going to be reducing the number of decimal places. So you realize that when the cell is active, we can reduce the number of decimal places using this tool found in the number group on the home tab. Let us go ahead and see how we're going to format the data in our worksheet. Notice that the data on our worksheet is not formatted. We say we format in order for it to look good and presentable. When you look at the data that we have here on our worksheet, you agree with me that it is not really organized. We find it difficult to locate anything. We find it difficult to really work with this data because it is not organized. Right, after formatting your document in a way that you like, please remember that you format by either changing the size of your text, by changing the color of your text, by changing the styles of your cells, or by using any other formatting tools that you desire. Do it the way that will look good to you. And when you are finished, remember to always save the changes. Click on the File button and save the changes that you have made to your document. This will permit you to progress to the next exercise, and the next exercise is working on the mileage tab and the mileage data tab. Let's check out the next exercise that you will do. Do it on your own, and we may find time to come back to this tab to do corrections. But in our next lesson, we'll be going to using functions. So we'll work on some other file that is a T1 functions file. So the mileage tab is left for you to do. Do it and work on it. And if you have difficulties, remember that you can contact us using the number that appears on your screen now. Contact us on WhatsApp and of course, give us questions, ask us questions, contact us and ask us questions in case you have difficulties on the mileage tab. Go ahead and use the mileage tab. And that is all we had time for today. Hope you did enjoy it and continue learning. And remember that Excel is fun. Excel is really, really fun. And it's very interesting in performing calculations and analyzing data. We're going to learn a lot within this period as we're having our daily lessons at 8 p.m. every day. And it's always live. Thanks very much for watching. And do remember to smash the subscribe button. Subscribe to our channel such that you don't miss educative content like this in the future.